After 7 years, the PlayStation 4 is finally getting its successor, the PlayStation 5. Unfortunately, I can't get the PlayStation 5 right now because it's too expensive and also because of the limited quantity. The limited quantity is probably made because of the coronavirus and also because of scalpers being dicks as usual. If you ask me, scalpers are actually hurting Microsoft and Sony this time. While back during the PS2 days, Sony wasn't losing really since they all bought the console, so it didn't really matter. But this time Microsoft and Sony not just rely on the sales of the console, but as well as people subscribing to their services like PlayStation Plus and Xbox Gold. And if scalpers buy the consoles, then no one is subscribing. So unfortunately, it's gonna be a very long time, not just a year, maybe 2 or 3 years before I get a PlayStation 5. Also, does anybody find it weird how the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X use the same disc case as the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4? I know that this is one of those if it ain't broke don't fix it, but it's weird. The PlayStation 5 disc look kind of ugly this way, and the Xbox Series X is even worse since it's confusing. There's barely anything that says that this is an Xbox One or Xbox Series X console. You might say that it's trying to cut the budget, but it's kind of weird. It's like Microsoft and Sony said, let's improve our consoles by adding an SSD, better controllers, better hardware, but let's use the same disc case to save money. But everybody that has it seems to be having fun so far, and the launch game seems to be great. So if you have the PlayStation 5, I hope you're having fun. But what about the PlayStation 4? What does that mean for it? Is the PlayStation 4 actually worth getting nowadays now that the PlayStation 5 is here? Or should you wait till the PlayStation 5 is cheap? Or should you just skip it completely? Now let's find out. The PlayStation 3 has one of the worst launches in history, and Sony actually learned its lesson from it with the PlayStation 4. The console is actually a bit cheaper, sold with a loss, but it's cheaper. There are 3 types of PlayStation 4 here. The original PlayStation 4, the PlayStation 4 Pro, and the PlayStation 4 Slim. The original PlayStation 4 is what's launched. It looks like 2 PlayStation 2s attached together. The fan in it is so loud. Well, this could be said on all the PlayStation 4 consoles, but this one has the loudest fan. For the first time ever, a console actually got an upgrade, the PlayStation 4 Pro. This one is an improvement over the original PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 4 Slim. It allows you to play games at 4K, better frame rates, however this only applies to certain games. Sometimes it actually lets you choose between 1080p 60 FPS or 4K 30 FPS. Unfortunately, this is not exactly on all games. It's technically optional to the developers at least. If you have the original PlayStation 4, it's not really worth upgrading, especially if you're planning on buying the PS5 one day, since it actually improves all PlayStation 4 games. It also improves VR, but I never really tried it, so more on that later. And then there's the PlayStation 4 Slim. You probably noticed that Sony always releases a slim version of their consoles. Even the Vita got a slim model. So this one actually improves a little bit. Now I'm not sure what the downgrades are, other than maybe the design. But the fan is actually quieter than the original, so this is better. In terms of design, regardless of either PlayStation 4, I'm not really a fan of their designs. In fact, this entire generation of consoles didn't really have original designs. The PlayStation 4 design was basically the same as 2 PlayStation 2s. The Xbox One was actually a VCR, so this actually made it worse for the Xbox. And the Wii U was actually the worst one. It almost looked like a Wii. This is one of the reasons why the Wii U failed. Speaking of which, when it comes to competition, Sony didn't really have much this generation. Microsoft damaged themselves with E3 2013.
Excited to announce that Xbox One will launch this November in 21 markets around the world at $499 in the US and 499 euros in European markets, and 429 pounds in the UK.
Fortunately, we have a product for people who aren't able to get some form of connectivity. It's called Xbox 360.
Right. So stick with 360. That's your message if you don't, like it?
If you have zero access to the internet, that is an offline device.
And on top of that, the console didn't have much exclusives. Barely, actually. And the Wii U was dead on arrival, so let's be honest, Sony wins this generation. As far as controller, it's almost the same as the original DualShock, but now slightly bigger, with a touchpad, a light bar that shows you your health and how you're charging and so on, and it replaces start and select with options and share. The touchpad on the controller is actually kinda cool, as you can use it for certain games, and on top of that, it's actually like a select button. So you can press it sometimes, and certain things will happen depending on the game. Also, unfortunately, it's rarely used. The share button is actually really cool. You can use it to record your gameplay, take screenshots, and upload them to YouTube, or save them entirely. More on that later. The option button is basically start. I have no idea why they replaced it with that, but I guess it works. There's a light bar on the back of the controller, which is actually kinda cool, but it's useless. It's meant to show you your progress and if you're charging the controller, but it's on the back, so most of the time you won't notice it, and this only makes the battery worse. Also, is it me, or is the D-pad actually very close to each other this time? This really didn't bother me much, except for God of War. It was kind of annoying, but other than that, the controller is fine. Actually the best controller for the PlayStation consoles. It actually works on PC as well, without any unofficial modification. Just plug it in and it will work. I don't have a VR, so unfortunately I can't review it yet. There are a few games that are actually looking good for it, like Resident Evil 7, Astrobot, and so many more. It's actually cheaper than an actual VR, since it's almost the same price and you get to use the PlayStation 4 with it instead. It needs a camera, by the way. It's cheaper than PC VR, but the resolution is kind of lower, so you get what you pay for. If you're one of the few users that actually subscribe to me, then you may have noticed that my quality in videos have slightly gotten better. Instead of me just recording footage with camera, now I just use the recording feature in the PlayStation 4. I record gameplay with it. This is actually pretty awesome. I edit them also with an app called Shared Factory. Unfortunately, while the PlayStation 4 plays 1080p games and certain games at 60 FPS, anything you record will always be 720p and 30 FPS. This is actually slightly better on the PlayStation 4 Pro. It will be 1080p, but yeah, it's annoying. If you have one of those game capture cards, then use that instead, or DVD recorder or whatever. But if you don't have one like me, then that's good. I edit all my videos on an app called Share Factory. It's on the PlayStation 4 for free. It's actually really good for editing videos. It's limited, unfortunately. It has some limitations, like for example you can only split 10 videos at a time. But it's good if you're a beginner when it comes to editing videos. Instead of using unofficial adapters or anything to listen to music while playing video games, like using a headphone jack or something, or a headset, you can actually now just attach anything to your controller and you're listening to the music. And that's actually pretty cool. It even comes with its own headphones, also it's not great, so if you have something better, use that. But until then, you can use this instead. No matter how good or bad a console is, the games are what matters. Let's be honest here. Xbox One X is the best console this generation, at least before the Series X or S, and the PlayStation 5. It had a lot of cool features like 4K gaming, cheap, backwards compatibility, streaming service to download games, but the exclusives are what matters. So all of its games can be played on PC, so it makes it hard to decide whether you should get an Xbox One or not. The PlayStation 4 on the other hand has a lot of cool games, while this one has less exclusives than before, but there are really lots of exclusives here that are actually great. I haven't played them all, but I can tell you that there are lots of cool games that you can tell that they're great, such as God of War, The Last of Us Remastered, Ghost of Tsushima, Dreams, Uncharted 4, Bloodborne, Persona 5 Royal, and so much more. There's also a lot of games that are actually multi-platform, but they're really great, such as Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, Witcher 3, Doom, Yakuza, Nier Automata, and so many more. Unfortunately, the PlayStation 4 doesn't have backwards compatibility. I can understand why the PlayStation 4 doesn't have backwards compatibility with other consoles, since the PlayStation 3 used a different and complicated architecture, so it makes it hard to play them. Sony didn't want to make the same mistake again. And while the PlayStation 1 and 2 are so old, so I wasn't expecting them to be added. But why did they have to remove digital games? The lack of backwards compatibility with digital games is annoying to me. Again, the PlayStation 3 games are understandable, but they could have at least added backwards compatibility to the PlayStation 2 games and PlayStation 1 games. Instead, you'll have to rebuy them again from PlayStation 4. There are certain PS2 games that are actually on the PlayStation 4 digitally, like Jak and Daxter and Grand Theft Auto. They're not really updated that much. There's almost no backwards compatibility. The only kind of backwards compatibility is with games that are cross-buy, and this is mainly with small or indie games, or games that are actually remastered, like Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy, Final Fantasy VII, Shadow of the Colossus, God of War 3, The Last of Us Remastered. So yeah, this generation, while not great, but did have some cool games. And before I forget, it kinda has backwards compatibility with PlayStation Now. It's a streaming service where you get to play older games and by subscribing, or you can rent them. It gets updated manually once in a while. Certain PS2 games and PS4 games are available for download, but unfortunately PlayStation 3 games you are forced to stream them, kind of like Google Chrome. So all in all, the PlayStation 4 console is actually good. While it does have some downsides, like lack of backwards compatibility and the loud fan, not that many will complain. It also doesn't have a CD player, which means you won't be able to listen to CD music on it, but no one really cares, I guess. Songs nowadays are in digital phones, or just on YouTube or SoundCloud or whatever. Overall, the console is an 8.5 out of 10 for me. So now the question, should you buy it now that the PlayStation 5 is out? If you're on a budget, and if you can't find the PlayStation 5, yes. The PlayStation 5 is actually very expensive right now, especially if you live in a third world country, and with scalpers buying it, they're only making things worse. And while the PlayStation 5 launch games were actually great, much better than the PlayStation 4 ones, they're still not that much worse getting right now, so maybe you should wait a little bit. But if you can find the PlayStation 5, go for it, it's okay. Thank you guys for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed my review, and if you do, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys.